So I think one of the biggest problems or challenges that students typically face when it comes to auditing, or studying auditing rather, is formulating substantive procedures. And if you guys watched my previous video that I did, you'd know that studying auditing as a whole is sort of this big Rubik's Cube, I guess, for some students. That's okay. How do we put this whole thing together now and actually, um, make it make sense, or maybe a puzzle, I guess, would be a better comparison. So, I touched on a few points on my previous video. Just by the way, I did listen to the audio on my previous video. I get that the audio was not the best quality. I do apologize for that. Probably reshoot the videos, at later points, just not right now. As you guys can see, I'm at home and I'm having quite a lazy day today. So, but I figured, what, it's weekend, you guys would be studying, so it makes, some sense to actually release something right now. So if the quality of the video is a little bit bad, or the audio rather, I do apologize, please just bear with me on that one. And yeah, just um, let me know, in the comments, whether you've actually, if you really, really, really are struggling, then I know that, okay, I'll just, bring all my equipment here the next time. But anyway, that aside, if you are new to the channel, please make sure that you have checked out all of the other videos that I've uploaded. I think there's over 120. So there's quite a bit of material that I have put on, that would actually be quite useful to you guys, especially if you are looking for some content and if you're trying to study the theory or try to make the theory very, very simple for you guys to follow. And yeah, please subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate that and help grow the channel as well, and to also be a part of this whole initiative and this move, I guess, that I'm busy with, to try and actually make sure that all this content is available. So if you guys do find value, or you have found the content useful, I would appreciate a subscribe, and you can continue receiving more information as well. If you click the bell icon, you'll get a notification each time I release a video. Okay, and like I said, subscriptions are free. You don't have to pay for that. So if that is something that appeals to you, please hit that subscribe button. Really appreciates it. It's probably doing, glowing up actually when I do ask for a subscription. That's a unique feature that I think YouTube, or a new feature that they've sort of clicked in. But anyway, you didn't click on the video for that. You want to know, okay, how is it that you gotta study substantive procedures? Like what do you even do? Okay, and here's the thing, right? Even when I was a student and I was studying this, it was one of those, oh God, when you're coming to it, because it feels so unknown. It's not like preliminary engagement activities where there's still some sort of framework, and you kind of have some kind of level of assurance, pardon the pun, in terms of the answer that you're giving. Same thing with your risk assessment. But when it comes to your preliminary engagement, I mean, to your substantive procedures rather, it can feel like, okay, did I write enough? Did I not write enough? Did I write anything right in the first place? Because you're not sure, the level of certainty and confidence in your answer is just not there. And if you guys feel that way, please, type that in the comments, because that's something that a lot of students have come to me with and said, look, we're writing, but we don't know if what we wrote is right, so please help us with that. Teach us how to actually formulate this, because we get a question, it's a 20-mark question on substantives, and I don't even know if I got 1 mark there, so that's obviously not a nice position to be in, and you don't want to be in that position. So how do you avoid that? How do you get out of being in that? Okay, so here's the thing, right? Number one, your approach right now is to probably go through past papers, and you're thinking, okay, here's a past paper. It's got substantive procedures. Now I'll just swat this off. I'll probably get something similar in the exam. And yeah, I'm fine. And then along comes the exam and made no difference. You can't apply any of what you've swatted off. Right? How much does that happen to any of you? I'm willing to guess quite a bit, right? So here's the thing, right? You cannot swat off your substantive procedures. For some, there is a degree to which, yes, maybe you can, but the approach is not to be doing that. So I would say that you have, when you're going to be studying your substantive procedures, right, you should be splitting them into substantive procedures that are typically, they are standard, right? And by this I mean that they don't really change a lot. They're not very cycle dependent, right? An example of this would be your substantive procedures relating to legislative requirements being complied with, right? So a typical example of this would be where, let's say there was, you know, an issue of shares or something, that happened in terms of the Companies Act. Now, obviously, you need to make sure that the requirements of the Companies Act were complied with. So those sort of substantive procedures, because remember the requirements are the same, and you would typically test those the same. So if there was, for example, a special resolution that was passed, you make sure the special resolution was passed, was dated, there was a quorum present for the meeting, all of the requirements for notice of the meeting were met, those kinds of things, right? Everything must be in compliance with the Companies Act. You go through the entire thing, right? And those, you know, procedures generally don't differ too much. Like the way I've said it now, so you can go through a few questions on that. They would be largely the same. Okay. Again, it doesn't mean that you're just going to go and swat it off, because you need to know what the Companies Act requirements are in order to audit that requirement. So it's not just putting a laundry list of procedures there, because you can still get zero by doing that. Okay, because at the end of the day, if something didn't require a special resolution, it required an ordinary resolution, and you're writing everything about a special resolution, I mean, it kind of follows that you're not going to really be scoring marks in the way that you think, right? So you can't just parrot this off and then parrot it into your answer book. That's not going to get you anything. You need to know what the requirements are and how to audit those requirements. What substantive procedures you would typically perform to audit those requirements and then answer accordingly, right? So that would give you at least some level of comfort, right? So your Companies Act doesn't really, because the requirement is the requirement. Then you get your substantive procedures, again, that are cycle dependent, but where the cycle does not really change that much. There's no high level of variability between entities when it comes to that. So an example of something like that would be, like, if you think of all the cycles that you have, right? Your revenue, your purchases, your personnel, your asset cycle. Typically, your asset cycle, looking at your non-current assets, would not really have a huge degree of variability in that cycle, right? So if you think about it, right, the substantive procedures there, if you have an item of property, plants, and equipment, and you need to perform substantive procedures on that, it wouldn't differ very largely from one entity to the next. It would be very similar, right? And that is just because of the way industries generally work. You wouldn't have a high degree of variability there, but you do need to read your case study and make sure that you are auditing the cycle. And you're going to see what I mean by that when I talk about the cycles that actually do have a high degree of variability, like your revenue cycle, right? So obviously, the way one entity will conduct its revenue activities will differ to another because the type of revenue you have is different, the way you bill is different, the way you invoice is different, the documents used are different, all of that. So you can never audit the cycle by swatting off a list of procedures that's applicable to another revenue cycle because the cycle is very, I say each entity, it's almost like it's customized per entity. Right. So what you need to do is you need to firstly learn the cycle. Right. You cannot audit the cycle if you don't even understand the cycle. That goes without saying. So how do you understand the cycle? Right? You need to break it down. Okay. And what you would typically do is you would be reading the cycle and you'd say, okay, what are the functions in the cycle? Because each cycle will have different functions, right? Ordering, receiving, invoicing, yada yada yada. Right? So all of this you need to identify first and foremost, right? What are the functions in the cycle? Number one, right? Then number two, you need to know what are the documents in the cycle and to which function they belong. If you can't specifically allocate them to a function, that's not a train smash, right? If you can, it's all the better. But definitely, before you're answering your substantives, you need to have a list of documents that are in the cycle because that is what you will be performing your substantive procedures on. Okay? You can't go and say inspect the sales invoice if there's no sales invoice and your cycle uses another documents in place of the invoice, just as an example. Or in your purchaser cycle, there's not an order form, it's called something else, and then you start talking about an order form because you swatted that off from a textbook or previous question. But in the meantime, they don't use order forms, they do something else. There's another way that they order in the inventory. So you need to see what are the documents in the cycle first and foremost, or I'd say firstly it would be knowing what functions are there, but definitely having a list of what information or what documentation is in the cycle. And if you can't answer that, you can't formulate any substantive procedures because you don't even know what to look at. Okay. Then once you have that information, right, of what documents are in the cycle, you go to each document because that's what's going to be audited and say, okay, what information is on this document, right? The question will either tell you this or if it's like a standardized document, you would know, right? So you would then go and audit that information, right? You'd make sure it's sequentially numbered. You check the dates to make sure that okay, the date is within the financial year. If there's an amount there, you'll make sure okay, fine, we'll recalculate the amount to ensure accuracy. You'll trace the posting, to the GL and that kind of thing. But the information that is there is going to help guide you and tell you what procedures to perform. But you guys see that you have to have that picture in your head. Right? If you don't have that, you can't audit the cycle because you don't even know what you're auditing. So that's how you need to start going through your substantive procedures and formulate them accordingly, right? And obviously, there is that structure that you need to perform or follow, right? What are you looking at? How are you doing it? Why? That whole approach that is given. That needs to be in your your audit substantive procedure that is, that you've presented as an answer. So you need to state that, inspect the date on the purchase order and ensure, or confirm that the date on the purchase order is before 31 December to ensure that the order was placed before the financial year and then, that kind of thing, and that, or that it relates to the current financial year more accurately, right? So that, the cutoff assertion is being met. That kind of thing, right? Making sure that it's sequentially numbered, that kind of thing. But there must be, what are you doing, right? What are you doing it to, right? And for what reason? So what are you doing it to? That's going to be the document. What are you doing? That's going to be the inspect, observe, reperform, recalculate, all of those kinds of things, right? And then the reason. which will obviously be the assertion that is being tested, ensure the accuracy of the VAT that was, so obviously we're going to reperform VAT. Why? We're going to recalculate the amount of the VAT on the sales invoice to ensure that the correct amount of VAT was charged, that kind of thing. So you guys see the way that you need to be structuring your process. Recalculate the cost of the inventories on the purchase order to ensure that inventories were capitalized in accordance with IS2, you know, that kind of thing. It's it should be making sense to you guys now, and start piecing itself together. So obviously in one video, I will release a few more videos on this. It's very difficult just to cover every single aspect in one video. So if you guys are still experiencing problems, please type out, what it is that you're struggling with in the comments below so that I can get some kind of feedback. And again, if you want more content and you'd like to still be kept in the loop, then please subscribe to the channel because I will be releasing a lot more videos on this and make them more practical, so that you guys can actually get this whole walkthrough on how you're supposed to be answering, how you're supposed to be studying, what are you supposed to be doing, that kind of thing, right? So, at the end of the day, you do need to get that kind of guidance because, especially if you're doing your studies, part time or at it, through a distance learning institution, not organization, institution. It can get a little bit difficult, and I've been there, so I got my qualification, while I was working and studying. It wasn't easy, I'll tell you that much, but it's doable, I mean, I've done it, many other people have done it as well. We'll all agree that it's not the easiest thing to do, but, you do need to be structured, you do need to, not waste time faffing around and, um, putting your energy into things that are not going to serve you, going forward. So, yeah, if you are finding the content on this channel useful, and that's the whole point, but please do subscribe to the channel. And I will, in the comment section, please let me know what kind of other videos you would want. I will release more videos on substantive procedures going forward. We will start, doing questions on it to really see, okay, how does this whole thing shape up? What should it be looking like? And, from there, start building on so that you guys, have that level of comfort and confidence when you get into your studies and into your assessments. But for this video, that's it. If you guys are studying or have any tests that are due to be written soon, good luck with all of that, and I will see you guys in